There's something many of us secretly wish for. To become the kind of person who can no longer be hurt. No more breakdowns after someone leaves. No more restless nights wondering what we did wrong. No more shrinking in silence after being criticized or ignored. We want to be unshakable, untouchable, unbothered. But the more we chase that state, the further it seems to drift away. So what if the problem isn't that you're too sensitive, but that you were never shown how to face what hurts? What if the path to real freedom isn't about becoming tougher, but about becoming clearer? There is a silent promise we make to ourselves when life first wounds us. It goes something like this. If I can just be strong enough, calm enough, smart enough, prepared enough, then maybe I won't get hurt again. It's subtle. It doesn't arrive all at once. It grows with every disappointment, every betrayal, every time we opened our hearts and were met with silence, judgment, or coldness. Until one day, we stop trying to be real and start trying to be invulnerable. We build this emotional armor not because we're brave, but because we're afraid. Afraid that if we let someone see the soft, trembling truth of who we are, it will be used against us. So we keep it hidden. We become the strong one, the one who holds it together. The one who smiles and says, "I'm fine," even when we're breaking inside. But here's the lie. Strength does not protect you from pain. It only delays the moment you feel it. We think that by being untouchable, we'll be safe. But numbness is not safety. Detachment is not peace. Control is not freedom. Real safety isn't found in the absence of pain. It's found in the presence of something deeper. Clarity, awareness, and truth. And that starts with unlearning the myth that we must always be strong to survive. Because if being strong means ignoring ourselves, silencing our needs, and pretending to be okay just to avoid pain, then maybe it's not strength at all. Maybe it's fear, wearing the mask of control. It's easy to believe that what hurt us was the moment itself, the breakup, the betrayal, the silence after we opened our heart, the words that stung, the rejection we didn't expect. But that's not the full truth. What really hurt us wasn't what happened. It was what it meant. To us. You weren't just sad because someone left. You were devastated because it made you feel unworthy, unlovable, or easily replaced. You didn't break down because of one cruel comment. You broke down because it echoed a voice you've been trying to silence your whole life. The voice that says, "See, you're not enough. You never were." The event itself passes, but the meaning you attach to it lingers. It loops in your mind over and over, like a wound that won't close because you keep scratching it open, not with your fingers, but with your thoughts. This is why some people go through unimaginable pain and still stand tall, while others fall apart from a single sentence. It's not about how big the event was. It's about where it hit inside you. What did it awaken? What hidden belief did it reinforce? What part of you still hasn't healed? Most of us carry emotional bruises we don't even know are there, until someone brushes up against them and we flinch, not because they meant to hurt us, but because something inside us was already tender. So the work isn't just to avoid pain. It's to ask, what does this pain want me to see? The moment you stop blaming the outside world for how you feel and start becoming curious about your inner world, that's when things begin to shift. Because now, the pain is no longer your enemy. It becomes your map, a pointer, a whisper from within saying, "This is where it still hurts. This is where you need to look." It's easy to believe that what hurt us was the moment itself, the breakup, the betrayal, the silence after we opened our heart, the words that stung, the rejection we didn't expect. But that's not the full truth. What really hurt us wasn't what happened. It was what it meant to us. You weren't just sad because someone left. You were devastated because it made you feel unworthy, unlovable, or easily replaced. You didn't break down because of one cruel comment. You broke down because it echoed a voice you've been trying to silence your whole life. The voice that says, "See, you're not enough. You never were." The event itself passes, but the meaning you attach to it lingers. It loops in your mind over and over, like a wound that won't close because you keep scratching it open, not with your fingers, but with your thoughts. This is why some people go through unimaginable pain and still stand tall, while others fall apart from a single sentence. It's not about how big the event was, it's about where it hit inside you. What did it awaken? What hidden belief did it reinforce? What part of you still hasn't healed? Most of us carry emotional bruises we don't even know are there, until someone brushes up against them, and we flinch. Not because they meant to hurt us, but because something inside us was already tender. And where did those beliefs come from? Rarely from the present moment. Most were planted long ago, in childhood, in moments we didn't understand, in silences we misinterpreted, in love that felt conditional. We didn't just experience pain. We drew conclusions from it. And those conclusions became the rules we lived by. So when someone ignores you today, it's not just about them. It's about every time you felt invisible before. When someone criticizes you, it's not just their tone. It's the echo of years spent feeling not good enough. The pain repeats itself until you interrupt the cycle. So the work isn't just to avoid pain. It's to ask, what does this pain want me to see? The moment you stop blaming the outside world for how you feel and start becoming curious about your inner world, that's when things begin to shift. Because now, the pain is no longer your enemy. It becomes your map, a pointer, a whisper from within, saying, "This is where it still hurts. This is where you need to look." At some point in life, you realize that being vulnerable hurts. So you start to build something around yourself, a kind of armor, invisible but heavy. It's made of silence, sarcasm, avoidance, perfectionism, and sometimes just pretending not to care. You wear it to protect yourself from judgment, rejection, abandonment. You wear it because you were taught, directly or indirectly, that being too emotional is a flaw, that softness is weakness, and that silence is safer than asking for what you need. And for a while, it works. You feel more in control, less exposed, more predictable to others and to yourself. But then something strange starts to happen. You begin to lose touch with your own feelings. You can't tell if you're truly okay or just numb. You stop expressing your needs, not because they went away, but because it feels pointless to voice them. You don't break down anymore, but you don't fully show up either. You become what looks like a strong person on the outside, but inside, you're slowly disappearing. That's the paradox. The armor you put on to protect yourself is the very thing that starts to break you. It breaks your ability to connect. It muffles your instincts. It blocks your ability to feel safe, even when you are. And worse, when life hits you hard, and it always does, you're not any safer. You're just less equipped to process it. Because while armor can block the pain, it also blocks the healing. True resilience isn't built by avoiding the fall. It's built by learning how to land, how to feel, how to recover, how to stay with yourself when things get hard. There's a big difference between emotional strength and emotional shutdown. One leads to clarity. The other leads to chronic loneliness, even when you're surrounded by people who care. So if you feel like no one sees the real you anymore, maybe it's not that they've stopped looking. Maybe it's that the real you has been buried under too many layers of protection. And if that's the case, then the next brave step isn't to tighten the armor. It's to start taking it off. Not all at once, not recklessly, but gently, intentionally, with the understanding that the parts you've hidden aren't your weakness. They are the parts of you still waiting to be met with kindness. There's a kind of quiet despair that settles in when you don't understand yourself. You begin to believe you're flawed at the core. You look at the way you react, the way you spiral, the way you shut down, and you tell yourself, something must be wrong with me. You try to fix it with routines, with affirmations, with pretending to be fine. But underneath it all, the same questions echo. Why am I like this? Why does it hurt so much? Why can't I stop repeating the same patterns? The truth is, you're not broken. You're just unaware. Unaware of the forces shaping your emotions. Unaware of the old wounds still bleeding under the surface. Unaware of the beliefs you absorbed long ago that now whisper as if they were facts. You're not self-destructive because you want to suffer. You sabotage things because some part of you is afraid of what will happen if they actually go well. You're not distant because you don't care. You pull away because you don't know how to stay open and safe at the same time. And you're not cold. You've just gotten used to the habit of not feeling too much. Because feeling too much once cost you something you never forgot. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That's not just a quote. It's a mirror. If you don't see what drives your choices, you'll think it's destiny. If you don't name your patterns, they'll repeat with new faces and old pain. If you don't understand your fears, you'll keep calling them instincts. Becoming aware doesn't mean overanalyzing everything. It means slowing down enough to notice what's happening inside you, not just around you. It means recognizing the moment your chest tightens, not judging it, but asking, where have I felt this before? It means catching yourself mid-reaction and gently asking, is this about now, or is this about then? Awareness is not a destination. It's a posture, a way of relating to yourself with less punishment and more curiosity, less control, more clarity, less shame, more honesty. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be understood. By yourself first. And that process doesn't start with perfection. It starts with permission. Permission to feel. Permission to slow down. Permission to stop calling yourself too much, or too sensitive, or too broken. Because you're not too anything. You're just finally waking up to what's been running the show behind the scenes. And waking up is never a flaw. It's the beginning of freedom. Most people think emotional strength means feeling less, being immune to pain, detached, unbothered, cold if necessary. They assume that the less something affects you, the stronger you are. So they train themselves to care less, to respond with silence, to become emotionally absent as a way to survive. But that's not strength. That's shutdown. And emotional shutdown is not immunity. It's just unprocessed pain wearing a mask. Real emotional immunity doesn't come from numbing yourself. It comes from knowing yourself, from facing what you once avoided, and realizing that the parts of you you were most afraid to feel were not monsters, just memories. You don't become untouchable by building walls. You become untouchable when you no longer fear what lives within you. Because when you've already met your pain, when you've sat with it, listened to it, understood where it came from, you're not afraid of it anymore. And if you're not afraid of your own pain, then what others do or don't do can't destabilize you the same way. That's what it means to integrate, to bring the unseen into the light, to welcome the rejected parts of yourself back into the whole, to realize that your sadness is not weakness, your fear is not failure, your anger is not evil. They're messengers trying to tell you something important. Integration is not about fixing yourself. It's about no longer abandoning yourself. That means turning toward the part of you that panics instead of pushing it away. Sitting beside your own discomfort as you would sit beside a friend's sorrow. Learning to say, "This is part of me too," without shame, without resistance. Because what you exile doesn't disappear. It just finds darker ways to come back. It's the opposite of suppression. It's presence. The quiet kind of presence that says, even if I feel this, I will not run from it. I will not run from me. You start to respond instead of react. You begin to witness what rises up in you without drowning in it. You stop asking life to stop hurting you. And you start asking what the hurt is trying to teach. From that place, you no longer need to avoid conflict to stay calm. You no longer need to keep people at a distance to feel safe. You no longer need to shut down to protect your heart. Because your safety is no longer external. It comes from knowing that nothing inside you is too much to hold. Not anymore. That's emotional immunity, not a shield, not a performance, not the absence of feeling, but the presence of integration. You are no longer fragmented, and that changes everything. When all the parts of you are allowed to exist in one place, not in war, but in dialogue, you begin to live from a center that is calm, honest, and steady. That's when life no longer shakes you the same way, not because nothing happens, but because whatever happens, you remain whole. We live in a world obsessed with improvement. Be better. Do more. Fix yourself. Upgrade. Optimize. And so, you try. You try to be more productive, more confident, more in control, more of whatever you think will finally make you feel enough. But what if the thing you're chasing, this better version of you, isn't actually the answer? What if the goal was never to become a better person, but to become a whole one? You see, self-improvement often comes from the belief that something is wrong with you. That if you just fix this flaw, remove that fear, erase that pattern, then you'll finally be worthy of love, peace, belonging. But wholeness doesn't begin with rejection. It begins with inclusion. It says, nothing inside me is too broken to be seen. It doesn't mean you'll stop growing. It means you'll stop growing from a place of self-punishment, because there's a big difference between transformation and self-rejection. Trying to improve yourself without understanding yourself is like painting over a cracked wall without fixing the foundation. It might look good for a while, but sooner or later, the cracks return. Deeper, wider, more painful to hide. Wholeness is about turning toward the places you've been avoiding. the memories you've buried, the emotions you've shamed yourself for feeling. It's about realizing that the part of you that feels insecure doesn't need to be eliminated. It needs to be heard. That your fear isn't your enemy. It's a signal. That your sadness isn't a flaw. It's a wound asking for care, not correction. You don't need to become someone else to be at peace. You just need to stop abandoning the person you already are. Because deep down, you don't need another version of you. You need your whole self, present, integrated, and safe enough to finally stop pretending. Wholeness doesn't look like perfection. It looks like honesty. It sounds like a sigh of relief after years of trying to be more. And the moment you stop asking, "What do I need to fix today?" and start asking, "What part of me needs to be welcomed home?" that's when real change begins. Because growth is not always about becoming stronger or smarter. Sometimes, growth is finally telling the truth about how tired you are, about how long you've been carrying things just to appear okay. Wholeness is not a destination. It's not a version of you who never makes mistakes. It's the version of you who no longer sees mistakes as proof of failure, but as reminders that you're human. The more you try to upgrade yourself without understanding yourself, the further you drift from what you truly need. Not a better mask, but a deeper connection. That's why wholeness always begins where improvement ends, in the soft, quiet space where you finally give yourself permission to be seen. Not fixed. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped resisting who you already are. You can't avoid all pain. You will still face loss, disappointment, silence. The world won't stop being unpredictable just because you've started to heal. But something fundamental changes when you're no longer afraid of being broken. Not because you've become harder, but because you've become whole. You've stopped handing the world the power to decide your worth. You've stopped outsourcing your peace to people who don't know how to hold it. You've stopped looking outside for something that was only ever yours to reclaim. Your center. And from that center, something remarkable happens. You still feel pain, but you don't collapse. You still get hurt, but you no longer get lost in it. You don't spiral, you observe. You don't suppress, you listen. You don't react, you respond. This is not emotional detachment, it's emotional clarity. You've made peace with the parts of you that used to hijack every conversation, every memory, every moment. And so now, when life gets loud, you don't lose yourself in the noise. You've built an inner stillness that no one gave you, and no one can take away. That's what it means to be untouchable, not unreachable, not distant, not cold, but rooted, integrated, present. There is a kind of quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are, not as an image you crafted to be loved, but as a person you've reclaimed through every wound, every pattern, every buried truth you chose to bring into the light. That's why nothing can hurt you the same way again. Not because nothing happens, but because what happens no longer defines you. You are no longer at war with yourself. You are no longer trying to win love by erasing parts of your soul. You are no longer looking for validation in places where you once bled. You're no longer surviving. You're living. Fully. Honestly. Here. And this doesn't mean you won't cry again. It doesn't mean you won't feel grief or loneliness or fear. It means those things no longer undo you. Because the foundation beneath you is no longer shame or guilt or rejection. It's self-knowledge, self-acceptance, self-trust. And once you have that, You can walk into any room, any silence, any storm, and stay whole. Not because nothing hurts, but because now, nothing owns you. And this is where freedom lives. Not in the perfect life, not in endless positivity, but in the space between stimulus and response, where you choose presence over reaction, clarity over chaos, peace over performance. Some will misunderstand this kind of strength. They'll say you've changed, that you've become distant. What they won't realize is you've simply stopped abandoning yourself to keep connections that couldn't hold the real you. This journey hasn't made you better than anyone. It's made you more you than you've ever been. And now, you're not chasing safety. You are safety, quiet, rooted, unshaken. And finally, home. You didn't get here by accident. You got here because you stopped running, because you were willing to turn inward when it would have been easier to blame, distract, or shut down. And that willingness to look at what hurts, to stay with what's true, is what makes you unshakable. Not untouchable like a fortress, but untouchable like a tree that bends but does not break. So take a breath. You're not failing, you're awakening, and you've already come further than you think. If something inside you has shifted while reading this, maybe it's time to stop hiding from who you are and start living from it.